Welcome to Leading versus Managing, the art of building an effective team. Just remember, you don't have to be a manager to be a successful leader, but you do need to be a successful leader to be an effective manager. Now, I've always viewed my role as a mentor slash leader, and I gear my actions to align with that role. I know there's a lot of ideals out there that think that managing and leading are synonymous. They aren't. They are two separate functions of the same job. So let's hop into it a little bit. So what is a good leadership base? It's a strength of a relationship, right? It's trust, and that makes effective leadership. So let's look at the strength of a relationship. It's measured by the degree that it exists between parties. So if I have a relationship with you that's a good relationship, then we can move forward. If it's a one-sided relationship, it may not be as advantageous as if we are both in it together, right? The greater the trust in the relationship, the stronger the relationship. So the more we trust one another, the stronger our relationship is. Because remember, all relationships are built on trust, but be careful not to take advantage of that trust. So if we have a great relationship and I overstep, I use that advantage, I use that trust to take advantage of you in some way, shape, or form. Let's say that you're the employee that's always in early for, whatever reason. I take advantage of your trust of our relationship and say, since you're always in early, let's have you do this. Let's have you do this. Instead of asking, hey, since you're coming in early, would you like to do this? Would this be something that would fit into your ideals? Next is trust. So we have engagement. Engagement deals with talking with people, right? Building that relationship from the ground up. Collaboration. You need to discuss with your team and get their feedback. Innovation, you need to be open to new ideas. You need to be open to having people push back on your ideas and tell you that maybe that's not the best way, or maybe they have a different way that gets you there faster or better. And it leads to retention, right? And at the end of the day, that's kind of what we're wanting to do, is we're wanting people to stay with us long term. So effective leadership, in essence, is trustworthy. People work for and with those they trust. It's getting things done through others. It's measured by your ability to execute. And again, it's collaborative. So in essence, great leaders think collaboratively and innovatively. They're always thinking about what can be improved and simplified. They seek out opinions, comments, ask about roadblocks from their team and those whose work the team affects. Meeting with all parties and following up with the progress, good or bad, goes a long way to building trust relationships. And keeping confidences and being sensitive to others' concerns is another factor in building trust. So if somebody comes to you with a concern and they want to discuss it, be sure that you know it's something that they want you to take action on, right? It might just be something that they're trying to resolve on their own. So the next slide is how you build trust every day. And leaders build trust every day by meeting personal needs. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I do have a slide of that. Do some research on that. It's pretty interesting on how we as humans have basic needs. And as those needs are met, we achieve greater success. So we maintain or enhance self-esteem. So it takes skill to be able to give someone critique or a coaching without tearing them down. Sometimes if you're in the heat of the moment, you need to back off, you need to give it time and address it later. But being able to find that happy medium where you can hold that line, but also maintain their dignity goes a long way. Actively listen and respond with empathy, not sympathy. And the two differences between sympathy and empathy means you understand where they're coming from. Sympathy means you take ownership of the emotion that comes through that. It's very paramount that you understand the difference between the two, because being empathetic means you can see their point of view, but you can still stay neutral, right? You can empathize with what somebody's going through, but you don't take on that emotional value. So if somebody's angry about something, you might be empathetic with that situation, but you're not going to get angry about it as well. You're not going to take ownership of their emotional energy. You ask for help, right? And encourage involvement. Asking your team to give you feedback goes a long, long way to building that trust relationship and building that good, cohesive team. And again, you don't have to be a manager to be a leader. Share your thoughts and feelings and your roadblocks, right? Now, I'm not saying you go and you complain about the company or anything like that. You share factual data. You say, we're trying to do XYZ project and I see this as being a roadblock. How do you see us getting around that? Or do you have experience with something similar? Or what can we do brainstorming wise to circumvent this, right? And share your feelings with, okay, we're on a tight deadline on this. And I know I'm asking a lot of you guys, but I really need your buy-in to help me get through this. And provide support without removing responsibility. That's a big one. We as leaders have a tendency to jump in and quote unquote, do it for them, right? That's not the right approach. To be a leader means that you allow your people to take ownership of what they're doing and responsibility for that project or that paper or whatever you're asking them to do. But you're providing support. So if they have questions, they come ask you. If they have some sort of a problem, that door needs to be open. You're not resolving it for them, but you are coaching them. You're giving them with open-ended questions. Well, what do you think? Well, how about if you tried? Have you ever? Those kind of open-ended questions to get them to come up basically with the answer on their own. So now we have trust builders. Again, foster that open communication. Make sure that they understand that they can come to you and ask you questions. You're going to support them, but it's not going to be the hand-holding, if you will. Be reliable and consistent. This is a difficult one sometimes because we're human, right? Every day things happen and sometimes we're not in the right headspace. But by being reliable means that you're going to be there for them, and be consistent means you will treat them the same way as you do everyone else. Now, you can say, I'm having an off day. Can we come back to this another time? Or let me think about it and I'll get back to you later if it's not time sensitive. Be respectful and fair-minded. Now, this phrase, I had an old boss that used to say that fair is only in fairy tales. You want to be, I say, open-minded. So you want to be respectful and you want to be open-minded, and you need to have everyone on your team have that ability to come to you and ask questions or make suggestions or things of that nature, right? Because you're building their ability to move into leadership. So it's as much your leadership as it is your company's future leadership. Show confidence in others. This is another big one. If you have someone that is a great star performer, right? It's very easy to show confidence in them. It's not so easy to share confidence in the person that is not your star performer, but they are the ones you need to show confidence in the most, because they're the ones that need that little boost, right? They're the ones that need you to say, look, you did a great job on this. And that gives them the motivation and the encouragement to try something harder. Not saying you shouldn't show confidence in your star performers, but make sure you're showing confidence in your entire team and not overlooking anybody. Create a judgment-free and no blame zone. This one can be very difficult for managers as opposed to leaders. Managers want to get to the bottom of the problem, and in their mind, the way they do that is they say, well, you did or you didn't, or this should have. To create a judgment-free or no blame zone, you address the problem. The problem is XYZ. What do we do to resolve it? and foster that open communication and allow them to come to you when they have those issues, those problems. I had an instant not too long ago where one of my admins had made a mistake. It was a mistake. And she called and was very upset, very afraid I was going to be angry with her. And I just said, we're all human. Things happen. What do you think we should do to resolve this? And then we had a discussion and came to a resolution that made her feel better because she was part of the solution and she understood from the get-go the importance of what she did. So let's talk about some trust breakers, broken promises. If you tell somebody that you're going to do something, do it. If you say, you tell your team, if we make numbers this month, I'll buy everybody lunch, and then they make numbers and you don't buy lunch. Well, that breaks that trust, right? And most people are willing to forgive once, but twice, no. Serving your own interests. This is another big one where you put yourself as the leader of the group. So you are the one that's always seen and heard, not your team. Inconsistency. And inconsistency could be the way you respond to the same problem or the way you respond to the different people on your team. So if you are inconsistent with the way that you treat your team as a whole and individuals, they're going to notice that. So you're going to have people feel disregarded. You're going to have people feel animosity, especially if it's something where they feel that there's been favoritism involved. So make sure that you are staying consistent with each team member, your team as a whole, and how you deal with issues. Avoidance. This is another big one, right? We as leaders have a tendency to, let's say you have an employee that shows up consistently late. Maybe it's only 5 or 10 minutes a day, but they show up consistently late every day while the rest of your team is there on time. The rest of your team sees that, right? And so by your avoiding talking to that person and correcting that problem, you're creating a broken trust issue. Making assumptions, that's another one. And you can make assumptions about a lot of things, right? You can make assumptions that because you hear something out of context. You can make assumptions because somebody isn't performing the way you want to. Be careful with your assumptions because it is very, very difficult to regain that ability, right? Once you have made up your mind, as it were, to how somebody reacts, that basically makes you biased toward that person and anything that they touch. So don't make assumptions, right? And of course, doubting others. If someone comes to you and they have a complaint, I'm not saying take everything at face value, but do your research, right? Find out if what they're saying is true. So some other things when your actions match your words, your team knows you act with integrity. So maybe part of this could be, let's say you have somebody who is underperforming. Maybe you use a role description rather than a job description, because a role description shows how their role affects the company. Job description is you sit at the desk, you answer the phone, you type, blah, 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 blah. Job or role description is your role is an integral part of our company. You are the face of our company. You are the voice of our company because you sit at the front desk, you answer the phone, or maybe, without your ability to bill correctly, we don't get paid on time, whatever that looks like. Do that description of the role rather than the job. Sometimes that helps with people understanding what they're doing for the company. And don't take for granted that they know what you're talking about, right? Be direct and straightforward with your instructions, saying things like, I think you should, or you might consider, or have you thought about, or if you have time. Some of these phrases can be viewed as suggestions, not implicit orders. So make sure you are very, very clear and concise with what you expect from your people, and then let them run with it. So this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you can see through this slide that we don't have a lot to do with the first two. I mean, it does say in employment, but we don't really have a lot to do with the first two. Those are kind of ingrained from early childhood on up. If we are providing them a good opportunity for employment, the rest of these kind of fill in, right? Food, shelter, personal security, health, that kind of thing. Where we come in is the sense of feeling of belonging, sense of connection, and then esteem, because we want to build them right. We want to show them recognition. We want to show them respect to build their self-esteem. And then if we achieve all of those, they finally have the desire to become everything they can be. And that's when they become great leaders, right? That's when they become these people that can go out and take a team, build that team, and the sky's the limit. So basically, this slide is just what is a leader. It's just kind of a synopsis of what we just spoke about. But I like the last paragraph the best. And it says, the leader is not just about having authority. It's about fostering collaboration and bringing out the best in people. It's a dynamic skill that can be developed by anyone willing to learn and grow. That's the key takeaway from this. Anyone can learn these skills and grow into a phenomenal leader. So here's some pitfalls to avoid. So good intentions, right? We all have good intentions. What's that saying? I can't remember, something, the road to somewhere is paved in good intentions or something like that. So good intentions, right? We all want the best, and we don't start out to be, bad people, but sometimes things go sideways. So let's talk about this a little bit. Your team can't see your intentions. You have to communicate with them clearly and concisely. Be as transparent as possible. Don't allow your team to fill in the blank, because they will. And we as humans tend to go to the dark side very quickly when we have a blank to fill, right? Your actions can and probably will be misinterpreted. That's why you need to have that clear, concise conversation, communication, and make sure you're talking to your entire team at the same time so everyone hears the same thing at the same time. Be sure to share your thoughts, processes, and concerns. Again, back to the earlier slide where if you are sitting in your office and you're grumbling to yourself all day long and you're not sharing this with your team, you're not giving them an opportunity to step up to the plate. So how about doubting others, right? What does that look like? How about micromanaging? Have you ever had a micromanager? I know I have, and I have done my level best not to be a micromanager. Unnecessarily double checking somebody's work, that comes under micromanaging, but you have that person that maybe they don't always do the credit applications correctly, right? Maybe they miss a step and you're always double checking their work. You would be better off building that relationship by sitting down with that person and discussing the steps and where they need assistance. Keeping authority when delegating responsibility. This is another hard one, right? So you give one of your team a project to do and you say, this is your project, this is your baby, run with it, I'm here if you need me. But then they come back 3 or 4 times and you're like, okay, fine, I'll just do it. It's easier for me to do it than to keep going over and over this with you. That's denying them an opportunity to learn, and it's putting more pressure on you because now you have created a situation where if they come across something hard again in the future, they will fall back to this type of behavior. Taking other people over other people's tasks to complete, much like the other one. So you keep the authority, you don't allow them to have a voice in what they're doing. And this one, you're actually taking the job over and not giving them the opportunity to fix it. So here's some assumptions, right? As we talked about earlier, reaching conclusions without checking the facts. If you have somebody come in and say, I have a problem with Jim up the hallway. Okay, let's discuss the problem. But then you need to check the facts. Is it truthfully, and I use the two words always and never. We always hear that. You always do this, you never do that. Is that the truth? Is it the truth? You're not truthfully doubting the person, but you want to make sure that those facts are just that. Facts. Anticipating the worst from others. And I think sometimes we all get into that area, where we, from our previous experience, either with this specific person or with this specific project. We anticipate the worst, right? Human nature. We go right to the dark side, like I said earlier. So if we expect the best from others and we give them those opportunities, we might be surprised. Failing to seek out by active listening others' reasoning. So you have someone who comes into you and says, I can't make this happen. It doesn't work. Okay, tell me why it doesn't work. And then listen to them tell you why. And then ask again, why. There's a theory that it's like ask why 3 times so that you get to the heart of the problem, but keep asking that question, digging deeper, finding out what the real resolution is or what the real roadblock is. Acting on preconceived notions. Again, this goes back up to the earlier topics where you've already judged someone based on previous experience. And so you are leaning one way or the other, right? So let's go back to the example earlier where you have a team member that comes in and says, I'm having problems with Jim again. Right? So you have the preconceived notion with the word again that there have been problems and maybe they have been brought to you, maybe they haven't been brought to you, but you act on that. So Jim must be a problem, right? You need to go back and look at the facts. Is Jim the actual problem? What is the actual problem? Is it him? Is it a communication thing? Deep dive into it, right? So this is probably one of my favorite slides, most favorite slides of all. So this is called the ladder of inference. And if you stay low on the ladder of inference and assume positive intent, this basically is just stick to the facts, right? Just stick to the facts. What do you know? So in this slide, it shows you that, we have actual factual data here at the bottom, but then we select what data we want, and then we start adding meanings to it based on our experience, based on our life, based on whatever. And then we jump all the way up to action without staying low on this ladder and saying, okay, what's the truth in this matter? So let's look at this next slide. And so this kind of describes that. So in this slide, if you look at it, the only thing that is the same in all 3 slides is the gentleman tasted the pie and said, interesting, right? So here are the selected facts. He called my pie interesting. Interesting equals not good. Assumption, he doesn't think my food is any good. Conclusion, he's insulting me, right? So now she's mad at him. Here's another one. My boyfriend called my mom's pie interesting. That's not good. Mom's really proud of how she cooks, and now she's going to be mad, and my mom's going to blame me because my boyfriend doesn't like her food. Or the last one is the big one that gets drama going in any office. So you have that person that takes that little bit of fact where it says, he chose the word interesting, which means bad. And then he says, well, she's not going to like that very much. And then he goes around telling everybody, it's going to be interesting around here because did you hear what he said about her cooking or whatever, right? So again, staying low on the ladder of inference and assuming positive intent. All this gentleman said was, it's interesting. He didn't say it was good. He didn't say it was bad. He didn't say he disliked it. He just said it was interesting. So you ask clarifying questions, right? That's how you build trust within a team, is you don't take things for face value. You assume positive intent and you stay low on the ladder of inference. So here's some more pitfalls to avoid. So again, we talked about avoidance, overlooking poor performance. We talked about that a little earlier. Triangulating instead of speaking directly to the person. I don't know how many of you have ever heard the word triangulation. It means that instead of going to the person you have the issue with, you go to 2 other people because you want to get them on your side. Right? Now, I'm not talking about going to somebody and getting their take on a situation. I'm talking about you go to this person on your team and say, I can't believe so-and-so did this again. And then they feed into that. And then you go to another person and say, did you know that so-and-so said this about this person? It's a triangulation. When in fact, you should go straight to that person and say, could we talk for a minute? I have some questions I need to ask you about a situation. Soft peddling or sugarcoating information. And we all have a tendency to do that, right? Because we don't want to deliver bad news. Again, going back to clear, concise communication. You don't have to be mean. You don't have to be snarky, but you need to give them the truth, whether that's harsh in your world or not. They need to hear what you need to say. And I'm going to give you an example. So again, we're going to go back to the example of the person that comes in late 3 and 4 times a week. The sugar coated would be, you know what, you're a really, really great employee, and I really like having you here. You do a great job. Do you think maybe you could be here on time every day? Because, I've kind of noticed that you're here late a couple of days a week. And while it's not really that big of a deal, it would really help me a lot if you could just be here on time more often, as opposed to, I've noticed that there is a consistency in lateness on your part. And as a team, we need to be here for one another. So it's really, really important for you to be here on time every day. Now, I understand that sometimes things happen, but let's see what we can do to either make sure you get here on time. Let's discuss some things, but we really need you to be here at the time we need you to be, or log in or whatever. I'm sure some of you still work remote. We're back in the office. So putting off or sidestepping difficult conversations or decisions, right? We do that a lot. Again, we don't want to deliver bad news. We don't want to be the person that has to be the bad guy. But putting it off does not make it easier. Sidestepping it or going around it or hoping that the problem will just go away does not work, and it doesn't show your effective leadership. Effective leadership means doing hard things, and to do hard things, sometimes you have to have those type of conversations or make those kind of decisions where maybe that person that you had the conversation with about coming in late just can't seem to do it. So you have to make that decision. Is it worth it to the team to continue with this person who is bringing down morale, or do you cut bait? Deflecting blame or pointing fingers at others. This is another one that great leaders don't do. The buck stops with you, and it's never about a person, it's about a problem. So if somebody comes up to you and says, this didn't get done, you never say, well, that's not my problem, that's not my job. You say, okay, let's delve into this. Let's look at the facts. What happened? What processes need to be shored up? What areas do we need to change, simplify, understand better, whatever that is? But remember, the buck stops with you. You don't say, well, that's not my job, or, well, that goes through so-and-so, right? Inconsistency, showing favoritism. Again, we talked earlier about your star performer versus your quiet performer. Being unpredictable, temperamentally speaking. And as I said earlier, you are human. There are going to be days when you are not at 100%. And that is understandable. But being unpredictable to the point where your team doesn't know your mood from one minute to the next, or they can judge your mood the minute you walk in the door, that calls for some self-reflection. Sending mixed messages. So doing one thing and saying another. So, you say, I love you guys, I support you guys, and then undercutting everything they do, right? Or taking away their authority or their thunder or whatever it is. About making excuses. That kind of goes back to blame, deflecting blame, right? You're making excuses. Well, I couldn't do that. I know I told you I could do that, but I couldn't do that because. Own up to it. Say, I'm sorry, it didn't happen. Right? What can we do to make it better? And then your commitment. So neglecting to keep commitments, breaking promises, betraying confidences unless legally bound to. And what I mean by that is if someone comes to you and says, this is a confidential conversation, this is just between you and me, that's great. Your first question needs to be asked is this just a conversation, or do you need me to act upon this? If they say, no, I just want a conversation, you're good, right? But if you are legally bound to share that confidence, so it's something where there is an issue of sexual harassment, there's an issue of, and some companies, our company has a zero tolerance policy for violence in the workplace. If it's something along that line, then you are obligated to share that, and you need to let them know that up front. Not following through, right? Again, missing those promises. Favoring yourself at others' expense, so you're taking credit for somebody else's work, right? We all know that doesn't feel good. So this was a article that I read. I just took a snippet out of it. And it's things to keep in mind as you move into leadership positions, that this advantage blindness, and it's a phenomenon where people in power become oblivious to how their status intimidates others, right? So if you've built your team and you've built that trust, this shouldn't come into play. How many of you have ever had a situation where you are sitting in your office and your boss walks in, right? Does your blood pressure go up immediately? Do you like hurry up and make sure you look like you're busy or whatever that is?
Yep.
That's that advantage blindness, right? Your boss doesn't realize he affects you that way, or maybe she does, and it's part of what she wants to do. And conversely, as we get into these leadership positions and we're seen more in our companies as being these leaders, we need to keep ourselves humble, right? Because you can flip that switch and you suddenly become oblivious to your shortcomings, right? So it's kind of a two-way street there. You have to make sure that you are staying humble and that you've built that trust with your team, that they actually want to be around you, right? Multi-generational, from young to old, men to women, across racial boundaries. They want to hang with you. And here's some things to check your assumptions with this quiz. So I'll go over really quick. So do you know what your direct reports are struggling with? Do you know what lights a fire under your team? This is the big one. When was the last time somebody actually got in your face and went against you on something that you felt strongly about? And when was the last time you admitted to your team that you made a mistake? If you answered no, or I don't recall, it's time for some self-reflection, right? Because that's where as it says, that's where great leadership begins, is self-reflective. So everyday occurrences, omissions or oversights, patterns of behavior, or single actions. And I know that sounds contrary, but patterns of behavior shows that you are not willing to look at yourself and understand your own biases and where you're coming from, and to move through those and become better. Single actions. Yes, sometimes a single action can completely destroy trust. And unfortunately, that is the way it is. Be aware of trust breakers so you can avoid them, right? And we discussed those earlier. Examine your behaviors and watch for signs of damaged trust. And damaged trust is very easy to spot. You have somebody who has always been a team player, right? They've always spoken up. And then all of a sudden they've become quiet, right? You hear the crickets, radio silence, or you ask them a question and you get yes or no answers, or you get 2-word sentence responses. There's a trust issue that's been broken, because again, all relationships are built on trust. So show confidence in your team, get to know your team and advocate for them every chance you get. And again, that's your entire team, individually and as a group. Be proactive, include them in your vision. Let the team members make mistakes on projects or discussion, or let them take the lead on projects and discussions. Don't always be the one that has to be in the lead position. Allow them to grow. Invite disagreement. Seek out and obtain real field feedback from your team. It's eye-opening. Allow your team to learn from their mistakes and let them see yours. Okay? It's very hard. I grew up with a brother who is a certified genius. He speaks, reads, and writes like 7 different languages. He's a math whiz, writes his own music, plays musical instruments, sings. I mean, the whole gambit. It's very hard to live up to somebody who is, as you see them, perfect, right? So let your team see you make mistakes. Let your team see how you handle those mistakes, right? Recognize their success in the manner that aligns with their personality. This is a tough one because not everybody likes to be recognized in the same way. Some people like the big fanfare, right? They want the certificate, they want the gold star, they want the party, they want whatever. But then you've got people that are like, you know what? Give me a Starbucks card. I'm good with that, right? So make sure you are recognizing them in a way that fits with them personally. And I love this quote. This is from a speaker that we had one year at NACM credit conference, Jim Knight. And I love this because he said, we need rock stars, not lip syncers to amp up the band. So what this means to me is that if you are just repeating over and over and over again, company line, you're a lip syncer. You want to think outside the box to build your team, to, show that this group, this band are true rock stars and they can take on anything and be successful. I always love this next slide. I have the book on my shelf. It is the 4 Agreements. The one that I like, they're all great, but the one I like the best is don't make assumptions. Find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Communicate with others as clear as you can. Avoid misunderstandings and drama. With just this one agreement, you can completely transform your life. So in closing, these are some additional resources for reading. Again, Culture That Rocks. That's that Jim Knight that did the Rock Stars Not Lip Syncers. His book is really, really well written. Leaders Eat Last. This is written by a military person, so it's from a military standpoint, but very good points in there. Leadership Reflections, 52 Leadership Practices. That is another good one. And Locked On Leadership, the tactical business to creating a culture of consistency, courage, and caring. Again, motivating the what's in it for me workforce as we're trying to pull in more and more younger generation. And No Ego, how leaders can cut the cost of workplace drama. Cy Wakeman, if you have the ability to see her on YouTube or whatever, please reach out. She is a bomb.
Do you have an example of what you would use as a role description as opposed to the job description?
The example I have, because they also talked about something really cool that's called job shadowing. And I know a lot of you guys use that. But it's basically, so when you interview for a job or when you apply for a job, you get this list of tasks, right? It's like, you're going to be in charge of AR. You're going to call customers for collections. You're going to, within 60 days or whatever. And you have this list of tasks, right? But that's what the job is. The description of the role is how will those tasks morph into a role for the company that is important. So instead of saying, okay, you're going to be in charge of AR, you're going to call customers, you say something like, so your role in this company is to be our liaison between our sales team and our customer. Your role will be to call the customer, make sure that they have got their invoice. Was it correct? Did it have the right PO? You're building a relationship with them, right? And then if there's any problems with that, then your role is to go back to the salesperson and help them resolve that issue. So it's not task based, right? It's role based. And if you have somebody who is really struggling with something, have them job shadow you. Or job shadow somebody who does it very, very well. I have somebody in my office that she is like perfection on collection calls. She has the touch, right? She has that, I don't know, off the wall kind of goofy call. So it's not, hi, this is so-and-so from Acor. You owe us a bill. It's like, hi, this is so-and-so. How you doing today? Hey, I'm just reaching out because XYZ. Can you give me some update, right? So if I had somebody who was struggling making those types of calls, I would have them sit with her and job shadow her so they get that feel, right? And have them be on the other end. This is another big thing too. Have them be on the other end where, and for me, I've always thought that when you make a phone call or when you do anything with a customer, it's not you, because while you may be the customer, you aren't the company, right? So it's always, we have, we're showing your company has an outstanding invoice. She does that so well. And having somebody be able to shadow her and learn that, and then be on the opposite side where they feel two separate collection calls,
Mhm.
because we've done this before, where we role play, they're the customer and you have well, I call it, and I'm sorry for anybody who has credit card collections here. I don't mean to be rude, but the credit card collectors, that
Mhm.
they call up and say, hi, this is American Express. Your bill's past due. Can you make a payment now type
Mhm.
thing? It's the more soft touch, right? But it can go across the board. It can go to, so you develop the role, and I know I'm kind of getting sidetracked here, but you've developed the role, right? You know what that role is. You know how that role plays into this. Act out that role, right? Just like you would in a play. Act out that role. How does this role as, I don't know, maybe you are the credit analyst. How does this role affect the company? How does this role affect your coworkers? You're not simply sitting behind a desk plugging numbers in,
Mhm.
because that's your task.
Right.
That's your job. That's not your role. And I hope that helps clarify. I'm happy to share with Lori when I get back to my office the actual description of the role that I have, if you would so like it. But again, think about it. When you do your job every day, what does that look like? And
What
don't go
effect
with
does it have?
tasks. Yeah. Don't go
Yeah.
with tasks. Everybody can do tasks, right? You make out a list and you check off the box. What is your role? How do you play into this? Are you customer facing first and foremost? Because we all need to be customer facing. As much as we hate to think that, if
Mhm.
we didn't have customers, we wouldn't be
So,
having businesses, right?
mhm.
So, how does your role affect your customers internally, which is everyone on your team, everyone in your company, and your customers externally, which are your customers, your vendors, the guy off the street, whatever that looks like.